Okay.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Can y'all see us? Well, I guess you know who I am. Santee, Arizona Ghostwriters. I'm here today with Mitch Herod, who plays Jesse James at the St. Louis Iron Mountain and Southern Railway. It's a mouthful, but
it is a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. Say hey, Mitch.
Hey, Mitch.
Ah,
Actually, just call me hey, Jesse. So
okay, we're gonna call you Jesse. Okay. All right. Don't call me Bob like you usually do, okay?
Or Betty. No. Okay.
You can call me Betty. I'm all right with that. So, all right. Folks, this is our very first live stream, so please be patient with us. I'm going to try to juggle interviewing Mitch, talking to you, and reading some of the comments. So I see that there's a lot of people in here. Thanks so much for coming down. Really appreciate it. And if I forget, I want to wish everybody a happy Easter tomorrow.
Certainly.
And your kids found some eggs today, right?
Oh, we did. Tomorrow is supposed to be a really horrible weather day. So, hunting Easter eggs in the rain, it's just not my vision of fun. So,
why not?
Oh my God.
What's wrong with a wet egg?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Plastic and chocolate and all kinds of other stuff just don't do well together. Not good bedfellows.
See, I always thought you were kind of adventurous, Jesse James, and appears you're not. Oh, by the way, just in case anybody was wondering, get your whiskey if you need it, or your cigars, or your pipes, or whatever. Any kind of vice you need.
Well, I brought mine. Oh, look at there.
Or your grandpa mug. Yeah, get your grandpa mug. That's good.
Well, here's the thing: when you're my age,
that's right.
You get a grandpa mug. Yeah.
Okay, Mitch. After you take a swallow there, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do on that there train?
Well, what we do is we put on a reenactment of sorts that from an 1874 Gads Hill, Jesse James, and then the gang's robbery of that particular train. Gads Hill itself is not too far from here. You can drive there from my spot probably within 45 minutes. There's no hill left. They've mined it all away, and I'm sure it was just a really pretty place. but at any rate, what we do is the passengers get on the train. We leave the station. They go down to Gordonville, and when they come back through, we're already at that village there, and again, that's a commemorative sign out there at Gads Hill that is still on Highway 49. These are some people that like to have their pictures shot with us, and there's Sheriff Milford. Now we have to gun Sheriff Milford and his deputy down before we get on the train. So that's where they get all the gun smoke and the flame and all the fun.
Right, but they don't. Nobody dies though, right? In this one.
No. As a matter of fact, that really is something that we've discussed, and that is that we don't want this to be so dramatic and so frightening that the passengers don't like it, especially young kids, because we do have a lot of young kids that ride the train, mom and dad.
Sure, yeah, you don't want to make it too violent. I understand. Yeah, you don't want any blood squirting from your neck or anything like that. Be kind of mommy. Hey, I just got a comment that your volume's kind of low there, Mitch. Is there any way, or Jesse, is there any way you can get a little closer to the mic, or maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. I think let's see. Maybe I wonder.
I'm using StreamYard, which I like to call Stream Duck because there's a picture of a duck on it. I have no idea what the yard and the duck have anything to do. I have ducks in my yard. Anyway, I have no control over his volume currently, so. He sounds good to me. So everybody just put your ear to the microphone or to the speaker if you have to.
All right. Who's running this clam bake anyway? Come
on. Nobody's running. It's already off the rails. Okay. All right. So Mitch, folks, I met Mitch a couple years ago, and then we did an actual profile on their group. I'm going to go ahead and put that banner up right now and bring us back to normal here. Okay, so that's their group. And I met Mitch a little while ago, and we got to talking and find out he does the same thing that the Arizona Ghost Riders do, and so many of you folks out there, I'm sure you do it too, reenactments and things. The cool thing about what Mitch does is he's got a home to go to. The Ghost Riders are just vagabonds. We don't really have a home per se, but they have a thing that they do every weekend, which is not something you usually see in the reenactment community. Typically, you have an event here and there. They have something they go and do every week. Well, not all year round, right? You only do it during the nice months.
That's right.
Not in the dead of winter.
I like to call myself a fair weather outlaw, for lack of a better term, because we got quite lucky last summer, and we did have quite a bit of nice weather. There were some days when it didn't cooperate, but at any rate, it is between, and COVID-19 notwithstanding, this would be the inaugural weekend, the Easter weekend for the train. Now, we wouldn't rob it this weekend, but we would the next weekend.
Oh, you mean you'd let everybody know you were going to rob it?
Well, that's when we began on the schedule. So yeah.
Okay.
Well, we like to keep people, kind of on the edge of their seats, but she makes out a schedule for us. So darn, there goes the surprise.
Okay, well, that's all right. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
We run all the way from April to the end of, November. Actually, the Christmas trains start at that time. So, and we're not robbing Christmas trains. So.
Well, no, because Tom Hanks is on there doing the Polar Express, right?
Exactly, and they'll give you a golden ticket, and they will click your name up there.
Now, I put some links up there if you guys want to see the video that we did on Mitch's group. Also, the train that they use is not it's an old train, but it's not an 1880s train, because that train apparently is really expensive to keep going, right?
I sent you a picture of that.
Yeah, yeah. If it had wheels, it would be in better shape. I think. I don't know. Can it run without wheels? I don't really know. I don't think it can. So
no. The problem is, and I'll just say this because it is a matter of fact that the Department of Transportation, no matter what you have on rails, nor how big it is, if it's on rails and you handle customers or riders, the DOT regulates you. And so they had a regular old steam engine way back in the day when I went to it way back in the 80s. And yeah, it was nice, but they don't last forever. They're high, they have a lot of maintenance, and they're very expensive to maintain and continue to run. Well, anyway, somehow or another over the years, it kind of crapped out. There it went. And so they had to get a great big diesel. Now, the big diesel is certainly a lot more efficient, easier to maintain, and that's what they're using now. But yeah, it's just certainly something that they wanted to go back to, but they have not yet done it.
Cool. Well, I think what you guys do is pretty amazing. So thanks for keeping the Old West alive. And thanks for all of you folks out there doing the same thing. I have a couple questions for you that are not related to the train. As soon as I can bring them up here in a sec. I think one of them was, so one of the things that Mitch sent me a while ago, and if you saw today's video, you actually saw Mitch spinning his guns in the video. Mitch fancies himself quite the gun handler, and he is quite the gun handler, actually. But I noticed that, you have nickel-plated guns. What's that all about? Why do you have those as opposed to blued guns?
Well, I like a nickel-plated pistol because it glitters and gleams. It's a lot of bling. So when you've got a lot of bling and you're spinning the gun, all that light just dances all over the place. Now, if you have a blue case hardened steel frame and you're in at least a little shadow, they disappear. They become almost, they're too dark to see. And so that's why I like a nickel-plated gun, and laser engraved or just plain nickel, or a polished stainless. This happens to be a nickel laser engraved piece here. It's an Outlaw Legacy by Pieta, and it's 1¾ 45 long coat. And, that's why I use nickel or what I call bright guns.
Yeah, they are bright. So I talked to Mitch about this a little while ago. I'm just going to interrupt real quick. I noticed that we apparently had some trolls in here. I apologize a moderator or anybody to manage it because I really didn't think it would be a problem. But I'm going to go ahead and try to manage this a little bit. But why don't you tell us how you got interested in all this while I do that, okay?
Well, I tell you what, I kind of, you mean the trainer, my general interest in guns and gunsmithing and fast draw and all that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is that what, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. How did you get interested in the Old West stuff in general?
Well, you know what? I got to say, it's all mine. You know, my dad was a Marine, and you would think that after being discharged from the Marines, he'd be all, let's go hunting, let's go shooting, and let's do all gun stuff. Dad did not care anything about that. He grew up with it out in the country, and it did not, you know, wasn't a thing he wanted to do. And so the truth is, I just watched a lot of TV westerns when I was a kid growing up, and the whole cowboy icon just really appealed to me. And the gun was to me just that piece of Victorian artwork, sculpture that is, you know, so recognizable. If you see it on what other gun are you going to see? And that's it. You're looking at it. So I got interested in it all on my own. Of course, like many people, that when you're underage and you cannot buy a firearm, and your mom or dad won't buy you one either. I don't know any parents that buy their kid a.
Well, you know, there's a lot of people on here. Well, I don't know how many are on here today, but there are some people who live in countries that are not as fortunate as us when it comes to gun ownership. And they have some really, really interesting ways of dealing with that. Like a lot of them who do shows use blank firers. I believe, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about this, in some countries, they're allowed to use cap and ball pistols, so they can use those for blanks. So it's pretty fascinating. And of course, there's a lot of gunsmithers who've never actually fired a gun, you know, kids. Right. Good. We want the kids to do it.
And, you know, some guns are lighter than others. The guns that we use, the real thing, weigh about 2.5 pounds, sometimes a little heavier. And so, yeah, some of the things you have to do with those it feels kind of heavy. So, but I tell you what, I bought a black powder gun when I was a kid because under the law at that time, you didn't have to have any kind of permit to do so, or you didn't have to report it to the sheriff's office or fill out a form. You just buy one. So I had a 1850 or 1860 Colt. I had an 1858 Remington. And I shot that. And finally, I got old enough to the point where I just wanted to buy my own. So I did. And, you know, I bought real Colts. That was back when a Colt cost you $475.
Yeah. Yeah. When you multiply that by at least 3 now, maybe 4, probably 4.
And that, yeah. But
so I would probably imagine that you don't really want somebody who are interested in gunsmithing. You might not want to spin your Colt until you get really good with your dummy gun, because if you drop a Colt,
you're gonna
it's not inexpensive. It's like wrecking a Porsche. You just don't do it, you know.
But the thing about it was that I had purchased 2 guns from a local gun shop, and I went to a Chamber of Commerce show, and the guy entertaining us was a guy by the name of Jim Dunham, who was a stuntman, gun coach in Hollywood, did shows across the country. He had a double rig, and he had 2 nickel-plated Colts. And for years, that's all he bought was nickel-plated Colts. And that was my first taste of a tuned fast draw gun that you didn't have to work at pulling the hammer back. Now, every gun that I own is in fact tuned by a guy named Bob James out in Phoenix, Arizona.
Cheers. 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 We got touch oil. Cheers. Dink.
All right. But these are, you know, these are effortless in terms of in terms of cocking the hammer back, as you can see, and that's the way they need to be. So, and I began
Mhm.
association. So
The flyby gun. It's like a Ghost Riders video. So we're talking, and this gun just flies by. Who does that stuff? Weird.
listen, I've got to have your blank compass for shooting down jet airliners.
You know, I think I loaded that one a little heavy. Do you think? I don't know. Maybe I used too much. The floral foam was old.
Yeah,
It felt like metal. It was weird.
that was a whole store full of floral foam.
Real quick. It was a whole florist. Real quick. I'm just going to answer a quick question. Noah Sahin. Noah asks, how do you get rid of the creases in your boots? Noah, you don't do that. You want to keep the creases in your boots. It's like wrinkles in your face. Wait, no, not at all like that. No, creases in your boot are different. That you want that. You want the creases in your boot. That's part of the deal, man. It's part of the deal.
That's right.
You want them to get weathered. You don't want them to look so shiny that you can brush your teeth off them, or two if you're in the Old West.
And distressing really does give it character. That's like
exactly. Just use your boots. I know it's the first time I bought boots, I was the same way. I was like, oh my God, there's a wrinkle in my boot. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? And it was only in the right boot. That was the weird part. It wasn't in the left boot. I'm like, well, I gotta get the left boot wrinkled too, and it just wouldn't do it the same way.
Maybe one leg shorter than the other. I don't
know.
When
you get that way, just have a shot of whiskey and it all goes away. Trust me.
But one of the things that we talk about aging and distressing, when you have a blued gun, they do develop quite a bit of character if you're pulling them in and out of a holster, because they will wear the bluing off on certain areas of the gun and make them look, well, just better. Just better. So,
yeah. It's always been interesting to me, and we were talking. Mitch and I have been talking for a while about this. We want to do a video at some point. I'm sure you all would love this. On the armoring. Yeah, let's go with that. The armoring of Western movies and TV shows. When I did that interview with Frank Noel a little while ago, I said to him, Frank, I said, so when Brian Keith shot you off the top of that building, you had a gun in your hand. I said, what did you do? Just toss the gun away? And he said, oh no. He said, right before I did the stunt, I asked for a rubber gun. And of course, that all of you were sitting there going, of course he asked for a rubber gun. Well, you know what? In my mind, I was wondering if he asked for a rubber gun or not. But apparently, Mitch and I looked all this up, and apparently there's a place called Stembridge Arms that is located in the Paramount lot, and it is absolutely enormous, to the point where they've given tours to some of the famous stars of the place. There's like 20,000 guns in there or something. So I really want to get involved and try to find out some of the fantasy guns, some of the real guns, because we talk about it a lot, right? I mean, you see that weathered old gun that one guy has in Gunsmoke, and you swore you saw it a week before on Bonanza. You probably did, right?
Yeah, you did. Same way with the holsters and the belts and stuff like that. Yeah, they just kept them in wardrobe. There you go.
You think? Well, I mean, yeah, the holsters, except for people like Lauren Green's holster, which was so iconic, they probably wouldn't have let anybody else use that, right?
That was a multicolor holster, and it went with his whole.
Let's face it was ugly. Just say it. Yeah.
It was kind of an ensemble piece. It really was, And Little Joe had that green jacket in every episode for so many years. And, as we've talked so many times, so many TV characters, cowboy characters, wore the same exact outfit every show. And that's the way. There you go.
Sorry, somebody asked. So, yeah, that's true. They did wear it. But that's another thing we got to try to find out. And I think it's just because, everybody knows Little Joe wore the green coat, right? And I think it's maybe just a thing. Everybody wanted to see James Arness wear that same shirt every week.
And vest, yeah.
And vest. And everybody wanted to hear Festus walk around town with spurs on.
And a black gun belt.
Right, and a ripped vest. Yeah, that was just the thing. Now, Miss Kitty could wear whatever the hell she wanted, right? Well, not within reason, but But no, I mean, the guys had to wear the same outfits. That's kind of weird, isn't it?
They really did. They really well. James West. Think about Jim West and Wild Wild West. Now, Artemis Gordon got to wear all kinds of tail coats and Edwardian coats and stuff that looked like after six formal suits. But Jim West, they put in a vaquero jacket,
Yeah.
bullfighter jacket, and they put on very tight pants. And the jacket was so short, in fact, that it was like wearing a vest. It was like wearing a vest where the vest never came below the gun. So,
Right.
at any rate, that was his look. So, and they upgraded it occasionally with a different color, and finally, and I think the later episodes, it was all in blue, but it had a black leather lapel. I've watched them a few times.
Just a little bit, right? Somebody says, "Hey, Santee, is there a class system in Old West reenactment groups?" Not really. Not really. So if you're in part of a group, unlike Mitch's group, which basically he's always Jesse James, and Milford is always a sheriff, and the other people that are in his group usually play different parts, but they're all playing outlaws. In my group, I could be playing an outlaw, I could be playing a doctor, I could be playing a banker. It just depends on the script and what we do. So I think if you have a really large group, like 20 people, which I consider a really large group, you could have just the class of society people. Maybe that's all they want to do is just dress like rich town folk. Fine, let them do it. You know, it's not really a class system in the sense that there's no pecking order really. At least we try not to let it be a pecking order. But anyway, sorry, continue on, Mitch.
Well, your group and our group just do totally two different things. What we do here is the popular conception of the outlaw and the lawman with nothing but really a Hollywood style wardrobe. You guys, on the other hand, you're wearing period correct clothing, and because you are in Gunfighter, Cowboy Central. You're out at Old Tucson Studios. That's where they make the movies. So and you're in the Southwest. So there's no excuse for you not to wear period correct clothing.
Chandler, that's right. Grandpa from the Waltons was in a lot of Westerns. As a matter of fact, if any of you ever watched Star Trek, those guys were in Westerns. There's a lot of 60s and 70s people who got their start on shows like Gunsmoke. You know, I'm not going to say there's a lot of people left alive that were on Gunsmoke, but a lot of the people from the 80s and 70s and 90s who did movies and TV shows were on Bonanza, Gunsmoke, High Chaparral. I mean, especially High Chaparral. I was watching it one day. Kurt Russell was on it. A little kid, you know. He was a kid actor, by the way. I don't know if any of you really knew that. He's one of the few that broke out of kid acting and went into something else. So anyway. Yeah, but
people like Alex Cord, who actually he was one of the few, and Steve Forrester, but Alex Cord specifically was a guy who could actually fast draw a gun. And in an episode called Sodbusters on Gunsmoke, Sodbusters, he plays the guest star role, and he has a showdown with a hired gun at the very top of the show. And they show him full on fast drawing and firing the gun. There's no camera work in that, and they didn't speed it up. He just knew how to do it. Now his opponent, the guy that played the guy he's having the showdown with, he actually shows up, and you can see it barely, but his hammer's cocked. His hammer's cocked. So when he's ready to draw, he doesn't have to cock the hammer.
Cocked all the way back, or just at half cock? All the way back?
All the way.
So he has a good chance of blowing his kneecap off, right?
Huh?
He has a good chance of blowing his kneecap off. Wow.
Well, he didn't want to have to do an actual fast draw.
Yeah, can you imagine being that poor actor and being like, you know, the guy, the director comes up to you and says, "Look, you're just really not fast enough. So could you just maybe cock the hammer back? Thanks. Okay, we'll take it from the top." No, the guy's like, drip, drip, not good enough.
It's kind of like Glenn Ford, and we talked about Glenn Ford in Fastest Gun Alive. And Glenn Ford, I'm sure that I don't think the director said, you know, Glenn, we want you for this role, but here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to learn how to fast draw a gun and hit a mug of beer in midair without hitting other bystanders in this scene. Got it?
Well, he didn't. You know, he didn't actually shoot that, right? I mean, he shot the gun, but there was a guy off set that was a famous gun. You know this, okay? All right, I'll tell the other people. Famous gun coach, and I believe he was a marksman, and he had like a 22, and he shot the mug. So in a group of people, so yeah, they made sure nobody was behind the glass, but it was ridiculously unsafe for that time period, for any time period. But they did that in Hollywood. They did stuff like shoot real guns at people to create ricochets. Yeah, you know, I don't.
Plaster bullets and stuff like that, or powder that would disintegrate when they hit the rock. You've seen so many times on, on the Lone Ranger set, the big boulders and stuff.
Right. Well, that was the days before paintball guns. Nowadays they do stuff.
What?
Nowadays they do stuff like, well, they use paintball guns filled with dust and fake blood. I know, I've been shot by one. And they really created. They did that in the movie 3:10 to Yuma. They did a little thing at the very end of the movie. What do they call that? Director's cut, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And they showed how they do it. I thought that was really interesting. It's good when people get a chance. You like behind the scenes, don't you, Mitch?
I do. I really do like the secrets and the tips and the tricks. And I wonder how they did that. And now they're going to tell me how they did that. And yeah, that's just some interesting stuff.
Just answering a couple questions. Any revolvers that sell cheap, Piettas and Ubertis. And when I say cheap, they're still going to be $400 or $500 or more. But if you find them used, almost half that. Well, more than half that. More than half that.
You know, as a matter of fact, and they're kind of uncommon around this part. And you will get occasionally, if you go to the right towns in the middle of nowhere, you'll find some guy that bought a new birdie and he's tired of it. Or the wife said, "Get rid of that gun, you're not using it." So you'll find it at a pawn shop. In fact, I found two single action at a pawn shop in Piedmont, Missouri, in the middle of nowhere, for $250. So that gun probably retailed out about $400.
Those of you in Piedmont, Missouri, I apologize that he said that you're in the middle of nowhere. We don't condone that kind of talk around here. Continue, right. Mitch.
But yes, a nickel gun, or if you choose to buy the same kind of gun that Santee has, or one of the guns he has, you're going to spend a nickel. Now that's your Ruberti, is it not?
Oh, I've got a nickel Ruger and a nickel Colt. Don't buy that one. It's really the nickel Ruger is no, it's not nickel. It's stainless, cheaper.
Right. But your case hardened blue guns, new, we're going to run around $450.
Yeah, they are. And once again, you can get them used. I got this one used. I've talked about it in many videos. I got this one used for about $275. 250, 275, somewhere in there. Yeah. But it just depends on, and a lot of people ask me, well, where do you get used guns? You go to a gun shop that sells used guns. A lot of them do. If they don't have any, find a cowboy action shooting group or a fast draw group and ask if anybody's getting rid of their old stuff. People are always buying new guns, especially cowboy action shooters, because they like their guns to be, top notch, and they have to perform really well. So if a gun has got like 2,000 rounds through it, they may decide they don't want it anymore and try to sell it. So go check those people out and see if anybody wants to sell it, because you're shooting blanks through it. You're not you're not fighting the Taliban. So,
Well, as a matter of fact, if you want a fast draw gun, or you already have the gun but you want the rig, you can act. There's people in the sport that are willing. I'm going to upgrade, or I'm going to change out what I've got, or I'm just getting out of it, and they're willing to sell that rig. So
yeah, there's a gentleman on here named S. Crow with a K, and he says that he'll take questions. He works at a gun shop, so he might be able to give you some ideas on what to look for. Uberti and I believe Pieta make a version of this that has a brass trigger guard and back strap, and it's a matte black gun. There's no case hardening. Looks like it was spray painted. It is the least expensive single action that is really functional, and you can do a lot with it. You can always change out the brass if you don't like it later on, but you can strip that gun and blue it if you want. It's, you can strip it and let it rust.
And I've got to tell you, Milford, who plays our marshal or sheriff, that's what he uses, are those guns. And let me tell you something, he's not gentle with his guns. And those poor guns have taken all the abuse that Milford has given them. And what
kind of abuse is that?
And just all kinds of stuff. And he shoots these hot load blanks he puts in them, and man, but they keep on going. He hasn't, neither one of those guns have failed him. And they're Pietas. That's what they are.
Yeah. Oh, they're Pietas. So I know Uberti has them too. So I wasn't sure if it was just Pieta. Maybe they all do. I don't know.
Well, they are.
I think it's good that they offer that, though.
And they're in Italy. And I just prefer, personally, myself, if I have to draw, if I have to draw a distinction between the two, I personally, every gun that I've purchased is and it says Pieta right there underneath by the ejector rod housing underneath the barrel.
Yeah.
That's where you'll find it there.
One of the things I've noticed the main difference in like the fit and finish of the Pietas is I like their grips better. They're probably the exact same walnut, but Uberti does that weird polyurethane finish on the grips that makes it look like plastic. So, but otherwise, I think the guns seem very similar. But there's a lot of people who would argue with you on that one. I'm sure, like which one's the better gun.
I've often said that really the way if you want to get into fast draw, there's Bill again. If you want to get into fast draw, what you need to do, and on the cheap, you can go ahead and get you a 400, or maybe a used gun, and never got into it. And that gun costs you maybe $300. You send it out to Bob James in Phoenix, Arizona. He tunes the gun for you. The gun's now reliable and a lot more enjoyable to shoot and do fast draw with. And you spend another $150. So now you spent $450 on a gun that you could have bought brand new in a box that you're still going to have to send out to Bob for $150. So
we got a question. Somebody says, do reproduction Lamat's fire cartridges? You'd have to make them fire cartridges. There was a TV show.
Yeah, there was.
It's missing me where the guy shot a Lamat, and I think it was Pat Masterson or something, right? What?
No, it was you talking about Westworld?
No, I'm talking about before that. There was a 1970s or 60s Western where the guy shot a Lamat. Anyway, it was converted for cartridges, but it was not I think they probably did it at Stembridge Arms, like, okay, here it goes. But anyway, somebody asked us, Mitch, if you would to buy a gun and have it customized, which one would you have it done to? And how would you have it customized?
Well, as I've said, I buy a single action Army Colt copy. Is what it is. It's not a.
Let me interrupt you. They're saying what I think he's alluding to. What would be your dream gun to do that to?
Well, I have found a $3,000 nickel plated found in an estate sale gun. Had I had the $3,000, I'd have bought it and sent it to Bob James.
Okay, all right.
That gun is going to it's not going to decrease in value because I tuned it.
Right.
It's still a Colt and it's still nickeled. no live ammo fired through it. So it's still in my estimation, retains its value. It's going to be hard these days to diminish the value of a real Colt single action.
Right. It was Ringo. Got it. Ringo was the show. Johnny Ringo, I think. John Ring. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I probably would agree. I probably do it to a Colt.
Well, I would turn Bob loose on it, but I wouldn't turn some local talent here to loose on it. I trust Bob's work. He every gun that I own, he's worked on it. They're great guns. To this day, where's some wood? I have yet to break a mainspring, and I've had these guns for more than 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting you should say that. So a whole bunch of us did a movie right before Christmas, and we had some blanks that were giving us some problems. Not made by me this time, but we had some other blanks that were giving us problems. But when you're shooting in the middle of a shootout and they're filming, and your blank primer pops out, you just gotta crank it through, and it's the worst possible thing you can do for your gun, because you're telling the gun, you're forcing the gun to do something it's telling you it doesn't want to do. And one or two people, not me, but one or two people had to take their guns to Gunsmiths after the movie ended because they were having some issues. So,
yeah, I probably mentioned this before, but Milford puts hot loads in his gun.
Yeah,
he makes his own. I mean, I use floral foam because I took your advice and use your method. He's the guy who loads it up with the regular casing, with really cleaning it real good, and then he puts a bunch of the synthetic, what do they call that, synthetic black powder in it, and then he wads it up and glues it down. I mean, literally with hot glue, glues it. I mean, and he doesn't short charge these things. I mean, he hits them hard, and so when I first came on the train, I borrowed some of his blanks, and I mean, they locked up my gun every time.
I was at an event with a guy that used Elmer's glue, and when he shot it, the Elmer's glue turned into a hot flaming wad of whatever glue, and it fired out of his gun like a ball of flame. It was really it was a bad scene. So I'm not saying Milford's wrong, and you guys are shooting far enough away that I'm sure it's fine, but it just seems like a bad idea. I'm just saying. I've heard Civil War reenactors use cream of wheat. I don't know any Old West reenactors use cream of wheat, but cream of wheat, floral foam, probably the same stuff in its consistency, so probably okay.
Well,
oh yeah, don't forget, folks, hit the like button, will you please? Thank you, Rusty. You there, Mitch?
Yeah, I took your advice in making blanks when I decided to get into it again, and I used to have a loader, and I used to load my own ammo up and go out and shoot, and I never loaded blanks until you told me how to do it. And so now I don't have to borrow any or buy any, or in fact, I bought blanks the first season I was with the train, and that was about 50 cents a shot. So it wasn't cheap, and we don't get paid for this. This is all volunteer work. Every piece of costuming, every gun belt, everything we wear and display, that's all on us. That's no one.
That's true.
Get a wardrobe.
Yeah. I think of a lot of people. That's another reason why I think it's so popular to do movies out here, is because you get a lot of people who are wearing their own wardrobe, so that saves them some money. Go out there with your own clothes and they're like, "Wow, you look really good." Yeah, I spent like $1,000 on this. So, so Mitch, someone asked, "Is Dirty Dan really that mean?"
Well, he's kind of cranky, isn't he?
He can be really cranky. He's the kind of guy that will he'll always have your back unless you make fun of him, and then he will throw you to the wolves. So he's the guy you want in the middle of a really hot situation. When I mean hot, I don't mean hot like, I mean bad situation. Right. You want him on your side, because he's the guy that'll reach over and grab the other dude by the neck and throw him over his left shoulder. Literally. So in this last video, this is how strong Dan is. And he may not strike you as that. You may think I'm acting, but he elbowed me in this last video and knocked me off a crate.
Right, right.
I'm 220 pounds. He knocked me off the crate with just his elbow. The guy's strong. So yeah, when you see the videos and he grabs people by the neck and lifts them up, he can do that.
He didn't lean down into the fire and light his cigar, does he?
No, he just looks at it really angrily, and the whole thing just bursts into flames. It's impressive. We don't have to bring lighters to any of the events. He just looks at it angry. It's pretty nice.
Do you ever walk up and say, "Candygram for Mongo, Candygram for Mongo"? No.
No.
Okay.
No. He'd probably punch me. So yeah. Yeah. So let's see here. I had another question I wanted to ask you, but there are some questions coming in. Oh, yeah, here's a good one. So somebody asked earlier, they asked me whether I like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood better, and I said both. I mean, I can't really. But Mitch, since you're a guest, why don't you tell us, who are your favorite Hollywood heroes?
Well, heroes, yeah, the plural would have to be the way to go. I like John Wayne. I really do like a number of his movies, especially his later films. The Shootist, he was just great. His very last film. He and Jimmy Stewart and Ron Howard and Lauren Bacall. It was just a great cast, and Hugh O'Brien and sundry others. And he was just that rugged man type that and just the man who shot Liberty Valance. I mean, you go back to the Black of the '60s, and that's just the kind of guy. He just when he stands there and he says, "No, Liberty, you pick it up." That guy just looked like my dad, right at that. John Wayne, my dad looked just like that sometimes. I don't know what it was or how that happened, but it did. Clint Eastwood's a guy that I really do and really always did enjoy, no matter what movie he was doing. It was always a cowboy film. He might not have been wearing a hat and a gun, but it was a cowboy film.
Yeah.
But his Western films were really good. He did know how to handle a gun, and he did, in fact, compete in World Fast Strong.
Yeah, he did.
But there's, like I said, between those two, I couldn't really say I.
Well, they're two totally different. I think that may be an unfair thing because John Wayne didn't really like Clint Eastwood's style because John Wayne's style was really more the good guy would never shoot you in the back, and Clint Eastwood was like, "You're a bad guy, and your back is to me, so you're dead." And I think that we, as people who like westerns and movies, we like both characters, right? We want to be like John Wayne, but we want to be as good as Clint Eastwood. Maybe that's the way it is. As good with a gun as Clint Eastwood. I think all of us kind of wish we had a little bit of both of their morals. Maybe a lot of us do. I don't know.
A lot of times when they do gun spins back in or out of a holster or back into the holster again, like Shane. Well, Alan Ladd at the very end of the film, when we've talked about this several times, it is not the guy who does the forward spin and a backward spin back into his holster. That's a gun handler. But Clint Eastwood could and did.
Question: do you think reenactors teach history in a more engaging and informative way than historians and other people in the same field? Most do, yeah. I would say, when I started the channel, I was struggling with whether to be just a historian and just tell history all the time, or to add my own brand of what I call humor. I don't know what the rest of you, and entertainment in there. And so I decided, yeah, I'm going to do it that way, because when I was going to school, and when many of you were going to school, who had Ben Stein as a teacher? Me,
Anybody?
Bueller. We're talking about economics today. Yeah, I wanted to be engaged. So I think that if you can do a reenactment of the Great Northfield Raid and make it as believable as possible and answer questions to kids afterwards, then you've done your job. So,
Well, I'll tell you what, we do have a lot of fun on this. And as I said, we don't want to make it as much a drama as we want to be entertaining. And we want to walk away with people saying, man, that sure was fun. Did you see that gun? That was just fire and smoke and all kinds of banging going on. I mean, these guys are really shooting it out, and when he came on the train, he had that gun out, and he was taking all our money. And, we do have that historical aspect, but mostly I'm going to say, unlike your situation and a real reenactor, like someone who does a Civil War battle reenactment, ours is, we're stressing the entertainment value, not the historical perspective of it. We're dressed for the part. I like to say this: I want to give people what they came to see. And, dressing in 1874 in Southeast Missouri is about as exciting as, a wet paper sack, because I would probably show up in something other than a cowboy hat. I would have a sack coat on, a white shirt, suspenders, a pair of pants, and a pair of lace-up shoes. Okay. But instead, the popular conception is what I'm wearing.
Right.
And fortunately, we're not in Tucson, Arizona. So
one of the things that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just saying that I want them to immediately, that vision clicks.
Right. I want that too, but I also really really like it when the dad brings the little kid up and the little kid says, "What's that thing in your pocket?" And it's a watch, and they've never seen it before. And I get to sit there and tell the kid what's so cool about having a pocket watch, and to see their eyes light up like they just never saw anything like that. And you just taught them something. Whether they remember it 5 minutes from now or 25 years from now, it's in there, you know what I mean? And you did it. And this goes, and you and I have talked about this, but this goes back to when I was a kid and I went to 6-gun territory in Florida, and I went up and talked to the gunfighters after the show. I wanted to be one of them. In fact, I followed them around because, that was cool. I wanted to be cool. So I hung out with them. I wanted to be a gunfighter. And then to go to Old Tucson as a kid also and see that and just say, look, this is it. I have learned so much from being at these places and talking to these people who know a little bit, and it puts that seed in there. It plants the seed. That's really what it does. If you can do that with yours, which you do on your train, some little kid who thinks you were the coolest thing that ever walked onto a train is going to remember you 5 or 6 years from now. You know what I mean? And maybe he'll look into the West. Maybe he'll look into being Jesse James.
Right.
30 years from now, when you're up there rolling your wheelchair out there and going, put up your hands, the kid will be like, all right, I'm ready to take over now. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's one of the things I used to do is when I used the regular store-bought blanks, they were a crimped brass casing. Well, they're after you shot them, they're ready to go. So what I do is, and I still have some. So what I do is I give them away to the kids as a memento of their time on the train. And Jesse James gave them a casing, and I think it's a bullet.
That's cool. Greg Hugo, who works at the Old Tombstone Show, gives kids the casing too. He doesn't give them one of the blanks he shot usually, but he gives them a casing to emulate that. So, and that's something. I still have one of the little 3-in-1 from 6-gun territory that I picked up off the ground that they were supposed to throw away, but oh no, I snuck that little thing out of there, man. I'm telling you.
Some of the other guys use shotguns, and they're 12 gauge, and so as a consequence, there's a lot of those those spent shells are laying on the ground. Kids invariably pick them up. They love it.
That's cool. We've got a British Westerner here. Thank you, John Thorpe. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. That means a lot. There's been some other questions here real quick. Somebody asked if the John Wayne, when he wore the cuffs on his denim jeans, if that was authentic. Boy, you know what? I've been meaning to look that up. I've never seen a picture of a guy with cuffs on his pants that were rolled up like that, but it doesn't mean it didn't exist. All the pants back then were pretty much one length, and they are today. If you buy reenactment pants, they're all 34. Wait, no, 36. They're all
36 inseam. You're right.
Are they 36 or 34? Well, either way, they're all. So you pretty much have to get them altered if you are 5'10" like Santee. You're 6'1", aren't you, Mitch?
6'2", yeah.
Oh, 6'2". You're 6'2"? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You look shorter right now. I don't know.
Well, I'm standing up now.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so yeah, back then I would imagine they probably would have had them altered, but they may not have been able to afford to have them altered. Well, I'm going to look into that and make a video on it. Trust me.
Yeah, I might also mention, I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt today, and I can do that because it's like 50 degrees outside here in Missouri. But one thing you cannot do, either in reenactments or fast draw, you cannot wear a short sleeve shirt. Now, how right would it look for Jesse James to come on board in a short sleeve shirt?
Well, Jesse James is a pretty progressive dude. I think maybe it needs to be a Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah.
I think it needs to.
The Magnum PI look.
And you also got to have one of those little sun guards on your nose.
Right. We're not talking about Magnum PI here. We're talking about.
Greetings from the Philippines. Wow. Hey, how you doing?
Philippines.
I don't know the Filipino word for hello, so I'm just going to say hello. So that's the best I can do. Let's see. Sorry if we're missing some of your comments, guys. I appreciate you bearing with us. Doesn't mean we don't care, but people are asking is there any issues with attracting younger generations? There is. There is. So what happens with young people is their fathers maybe get them interested in it, and they get into it, and all of a sudden they meet girls or they meet boys, and the next thing you know, you've lost your reenactors. And all you can do is hope that they're going to pick it up later on. That does happen, and it is really hard to get. There's a lot of us old guys out there falling in the dirt. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but when old people fall, they fall really slowly, just like they move. It's really weird. Have you noticed that, Mitch?
It is. You and I have talked about this so many times, and it was even now where you live, out in Tucson, you've got it built in. Where I am, it's the other direction. It's just horrible. This train is now the only thing left in this part of Missouri that actually has a shootout 6-gun cowboy outlaw sheriff show.
You mean there's nothing in Branson? There's nothing in
I said this part of the state.
Oh.
Out there's probably something, but over on this side, we're right on the Mississippi River. So while St. Louis used to have a shootout show in Six Flags, and that was actually in Eureka, Missouri, but they had one, but now. But you're right. I think, and we lament this quite a bit. And I think the problem or the cause is they make no more TV Westerns. There are none on TV.
Susan Hines says, in our group, you only get shot if you can get back up again. Yes, that's very funny, Susan. Yes, that's true. Yeah, it's really bad if you stay down and then the EMTs have to come get you when the show's over. It's really bad. That's a bad thing. The guy who sold me this gun, incidentally, Cactus Jack is his name. Cactus Jack is older, and he was having some issues. And one day we were doing a show, and he got shot, and all of a sudden his eyes rolled up into his head, and he tipped over. Luckily, Arizona Red was there and caught him, because we knew it wasn't. Jack doesn't fall; he just sits down on the closest hay bale. That was how he died. But no, he turned into a stiff, and he just tipped over, and I was like, what is going on? And then Arizona Red caught him and sat him down on the chair. He just he had some issue where if you got too excited, I guess he would just pass out. It was like those fainting goats on the side of a mountain. I got to stop drinking whiskey. Fainting goats.
Well, it's a matter of fact, we don't drop our guns on the ground either, especially not on tarmac or asphalt or concrete. No,
Oh,
sir.
yeah.
Yeah, gently we lay them down. It might look funny, but I'm a little too.
Well, we do the same thing. So honestly, if you have a stainless gun, you can maybe, still don't think you should drop it, but you can get it roughed up a little bit on the ground, and you can always polish that out. But with these blued and nickel guns, you don't want to do that. You'll see a lot of reenactors, they'll die and they'll lay their gun across their chest or down on their waist and something like that. I do that very frequently. Interestingly, also while puffing a cigar. So,
I don't mind dropping in the dirt or the dust or the grass.
You never die, Mitch. You never die in your shows.
Me, I'm lucky. I have the key role, you might say. I always win. I get the money, I get everything, and I get to shoot everybody up. It's great.
It's just the greatest gig. I want to say hi to some of the people from Australia, and we're getting some great interest. Let's see. Somebody just said goodbye. I got to go. I'm from somewhere else. Where are you from? Ireland. Anyway, all of you from other places, great. Somebody asked me if I would do something on Australia Westerns. A lot of people have been asking me about Australia because, Australia had its Old West as well. At the same time, they had a gold strike out there too. So I would love to, and I think I will, but I have to do a lot of research. So maybe one of you can help me with some of that, at some point. Because I don't know much about Australia. Remember they have the panda bears? No, koala bears. Koala bears? Gunslinging koala bears?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gun toters, right?
Well, it wouldn't be Old West in Australia. What would it be?
What's that?
It wouldn't be Old West in Australia. It'd be, I don't know if it'd be the old western part of Australia.
I don't. There's a desert part of Australia, but I think I've seen a lot of it. Yes, Quigley Down Under. Sure, I know about the Quigley Down Under movie, but that's based in some truth, right? Because there really were. There was a big battle with the Maoris, or is that New Zealand? Maoris? Is that how you pronounce them? Maori? Somebody help me. I thought most of Australia was desert. No, it's not. But there is desert there. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, I like Quigley Down Under. I thought that was a great movie because it was desert. One of the best bad guys in the world, right?
Yeah, Rick. What's his name? Rick.
I can't remember his name.
Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman, yeah.
He was also in the Lord of the Rings too. He was somebody. Yeah,
and Harry Potter and little known Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Oh, that was he stole that show from Costner. He was great. I mean, you could make a whole. I'm
not sure it was that hard to do. Costner was sort of miscast, I think, in that. I don't think it was his. I don't think that was his cup of tea, as it were.
They should have just let Alan Rickman have that whole movie right there.
Oh yeah. Well, he did. He took it. He was so good.
Yeah.
I thought Australia was started from outlaws. Actually, it was a penal colony. So.
Botany Bay and all that.
Botany Bay, yeah. So yes, they were outlaws, but they were, imprisoned outlaws. Imprisoned, yeah.
Well, in the starship Botany Bay on Star Trek too.
Right. Hey, Grant Overlander's in here. Hey, Grant, how you doing? I worked with Grant at Old Tucson at Nightfall. I hardly ever recognized him because he was some creature at some point. Yeah. Brendan V. Mitch, you guys wear bandanas? Yes, we do. Let's see. Santee, I was thinking working on a special edition of Tombstone. How would you like to be a member of the Wyatt Earp gang? I don't know which one I'd be. I don't know. I mean, they're the ones that live, so yeah, I'd probably be okay with that. Mitch, you like to live. You'd probably be okay with being one of the Wyatt Earp gang. So
Yeah, I mean, it would be great. I could always be Virgil,
I think my days of playing Billy Clanton are over. You know.
Right.
Now, Mitch, I was going to tell you, there's a young man in Tombstone. I got to send you some info on him. Apparently, is a really top-notch gunspinner, and he's a kid, and he really loves it. And he and Luke Rollins got together, and I'm sure he learned something from Luke Rollins. Maybe he taught Luke Rollins something. Who knows? But I'm going to send you some info on him. He's apparently an up-and-coming gunspinner since you are so good at it. He really is good at it, guys. Can you show us something? Mitch,
Well,
come on, show us something.
back up here. Let's see. I got this chair in the way, but I'm gonna do something.
You guys want to see a show? Yeah, we want to see a show.
Yeah, forward, backward, and sideways, and back in the holster again.
All right. Very good. That's
So,
awesome. You see, so you do that for you. Wow. Oh. You do that for you do that for the audience, and I bet they really love it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't. It's not something that is, look over here, folks. I'm going to do this. It's just I, pull the gun out, and then of course, do a little spin, do some spins and so on.
Somebody just said curly bill spin. That's the slow version of it. That's the Santee's had 3 glasses of whiskey version of it. That's basically it. So if I didn't ever explain it, basically what you're doing, I've said this on another live stream before. You're going to drop the gun down, and your forefinger is going to stay in the trigger guard like that. So you can hold it like this, which is really hard to do with this. And as you drop it down, your finger drops into the trigger guard. Some people use their fingers to flip the gun up like this. I just use the centrifugal force because as you're dropping it, you get that centrifugal force going, and you bring it up and you cock it.
Right. Then you can shoot.
Oh,
Then you shoot the gun.
I have to tell you, this is really weird. We were talking about this. So if I point to Mitch, who is on my right, he's actually over on my left. See, so I'm having a little trouble figuring out this.
Yeah, there's Santee right there.
Yeah. So
No.
drop it down, flip it up, and as you flip it up, you got to cock it. So you got to go flip it past where your hand is so that your thumb wraps around the hammer like that. So if you do it like that, you're too late. So it has to go like that. So you cock the hammer. That's the road agent spin. Whew, it was tough.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know the guy who did that in Josie Wales? Because it wasn't Clint Eastwood, you said, right?
No, it might have. I'm not real sure. I just know that the guns that they had that Josie Wells were using were those great big old Pattersons, and
I think they were Armies or Navies, right? Were they Pattersons? They were Pattersons.
He was using rubber guns. They were not fully working revolvers for that particular. They've got them in the Colt Museum, and so somewhere in Oklahoma or some part where that is, and the NRA's Museum of Movie Memorabilia. But they weren't real 5-pound Pattersons stuff.
Yeah. Well, they could have also sped the film up. It's hard to say. I mean, I can do it pretty fast when I practice a lot, but it's always seems like that guy who did it, whoever did it, was lightning fast on it. So
yeah, they were. Man,
you can practice all day long, but it's a weird thing. It really is. It's a weird maneuver. The one that you see in the movie Tombstone, where Curly Bill does it, he actually doesn't do the road agent spin. He hands it to him with his finger already in the trigger guard. Dang it, finger already in the trigger guard. And all he does is he just flips the gun up and cocks it. Sorry, I think his middle finger's in the trigger guard. At least mine is. He just cocks it like that. So he just says, "Hey, Fred, I'm sorry. Here's your guns," and he cocks it and shoots him in the chest. I think that's really what happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I can't remember what they call
I
that
hope I
gun.
unloaded this before I started playing with it. Yeah, it's good. Sorry, Mitch. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I said that was one of those gun tricks you use, shooting the gun upside down and then learning how to do the curly bill spin and all that kind of thing. And that's just something you learn to do. Now there's other ones that I've seen Bob James do that he pioneered all himself, where the gun is sitting on top of his hand like this, and he lets it go and
Oh
cock.
yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
That's tough.
So, you know, a lot of these, like I mentioned in my gunsmithing video, because I get this question a lot, is did they really do that in the Old West? Well, we know for a fact that John Wesley Hardin did it because he wrote about it. He did it to good old Wild Bill Hickok. So we know he practiced it. We also know that when he was captured at one point, he did a little show for his captors with an empty gun, you know, and so we know he practiced it. So if he couldn't have been the only one, and as Mitch knows, having these things on your hip is really like a fidget spinner. It's really hard to just keep it in your holster and not pull it out and start spinning it. In fact,
Yeah.
I don't know anyone, with the exception of maybe Dan and Red. So that's not true. I do know people who don't really want to pull it out and start spinning it and playing with it and all that. So it really is. It's hard to not do it, right?
It is. It's like it can. I don't want to say an obsession, but it certainly is something you go. You know, these guns are so well balanced and so easy to just spin around on your finger, even while you're sitting here. You do it slow or fast or something like that, but both directions. And it just, especially in the 4 3/4 barrel gun, if you've got a 7.5 inch cavalry issue, well, that's a little bit different. And even worse if you got the buntline special that they featured in Tombstone. So yeah, with a 10.5 inch barrel. So yeah, that was just a bit much. But yeah, they do. They're a lot of fun to spin and handle.
Yeah, they really are. So um, we get a lot of people asking about Remingtons. I honestly, I have handled a Remington. I've shot. I did used to do cowboy action shooting with a Remington that I borrowed from a friend when I didn't have a second gun. Remington's a fine firearm. It really is. I just don't like them as much as I like the Colts. The grip frame is different on them. The action's very similar, but the grip frame is different, and it's not to my liking. So I'm just not a fan.
The arc of the back strap is different. The hammer spur is shorter.
Yeah,
It's a different gun, and
it
the
was
webbing
made for people with smaller hands, maybe, or
could be probably, yeah. That may very well be the reason behind it. But nonetheless, the webbing, the signature webbing of the Remington,
the sail on the bottom.
was maintained from their '58 edition gun, which was actually your ball of lead, and they transferred that to the 1875 gun, and the 1890 guns, the police version, still had that web there. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. They took it off. But the 1875 still had the webbing, and so as a consequence, the gun's front heavy, and so you get this wobbly spin out of the deal. But it is a very unique looking gun. I mean, I threatened to buy a couple myself, but I always talk myself out of it. So.
Yeah, it's not my thing. I just yeah. But those of you who shoot them, it's great. I like to see when I go to events somebody carrying something other than these, just to be different. Like I have the open top, and I love that. And whenever I wear it, people are like, "Oh my god, an open top!" Yeah, it's different. Remington's the same way. They get the kind of reaction. If I ever see a guy with a Lamat with a cartridge conversion, like somebody asked earlier, I will do a video right there on it for you and for me, because that would be cool. But you see all sorts of different things, and people are just, I think people try to be different, and I like that they're different and they're not trying to fit into the same category as they think the Old West is supposed to be. Like we know from my videos and from history, not everybody carried a Colt single action. You know, a lot of people think cowboys were gunfighters. Well, they were actually two different categories. Were there cowboy gunfighters? Sure. but most gunfighters were a class amongst themselves, and cowboys were, they were basically blue collar workers, and they may not have been able to afford a single action army, a Colt. They probably had open tops or maybe even cap and ball pistols. Could they shoot? I'm sure they could. Many of them probably practiced. So, that's why when I see somebody with a cap and ball at a reenactment event, that's cool.
Well,
I have yet to see somebody pull out, do the pale rider walk down though, and swap out the cylinders. I have yet to see that. That's your favorite thing, isn't it, Mitch?
That's a great thing, for the movie. But
and the whole time, John Russell's sitting there going, "Oh, you had 15 minutes to shoot him."
Right. It's like,
and you just sat there and went, "Oh."
That would be, it's great for cinema, but not so good in real life. It's like Matt Dillon's draw is an extreme poke. When you're fast drawing a gun, you don't poke the gun, but he pokes that gun way out there in front of him. I mean, like he's going to fall over with that gun. But in real fast draw competition, you would never draw a gun like that and fire it. You'd be way too slow.
Yeah. Well, the guy he was shooting against was the famous Arvo Ohala, or Ojala.
He was a gun coach for James Arnett's.
Didn't he have to slow down in order for the shot to be good, or did they just cut away? Didn't he have to slow down, Arvo? Didn't Arvo have to slow down for that?
Well, they did a cutaway. In fact, in the intro segment of the show, you heard his gun go off, and then Matt Dillon was the one whose aim was tried and true. And so he gets the bad guy, but the fast guy doesn't get Matt Dillon. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But
somebody asked earlier about Sammy Davis Jr. I don't know if they've left yet, but or mentioned him. Sammy Davis really was a gunspinner. He and Jerry Lewis of all people were really good at it. They were also both really good at fast draw. Sammy Davis was in an episode of The Rifleman where he was a fast gunfighter. And, I don't know if Jerry Lewis was ever in a Western where he did gun spinning. He must have been.
I never saw it, so I don't really know. I just think it was one of those things that he was good at doing, but he didn't publicize.
Hey, lady! I just don't see it. So, I don't know. But yeah, there was a period there in the 50s and 60s where I think it was the fidget spinner for a lot of people who were on set. James Garner, I bet he couldn't keep his hand off his gun.
Yeah, I've seen a clip of him where he's in a parking lot probably in a grocery store in Burbank or someplace, because someone was shooting with a little 16 millimeter camera. It had no sound at all. Or 8 millimeter, and it shows him actually spinning the gun back in the holster, but he was throwing the gun back in the holster.
Wow!
In other words, he let go of the gun, and it went back in the holster with the spin without his hand.
You mean like that Luke Rollins did?
Yeah.
Where he tosses it? Oh, that's a trick. I'd love to see. I'd love to master that.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I would have some bruised toes by the end of that one.
Yeah, and some banged up guns too. So,
another gun I forgot to mention, someone just pointed it out, and I apologize. The Schofield. Yes, the Schofield is another gun when we see it at events that we really like. Schofield is a beast of a gun. I like it very much, but it's also a beast of a price tag. So you don't see a lot of reenactors with Schofields. It's isn't it $900 minimum? I mean,
or more. I tell you what, there is one TV show that featured the Schofield, and that was Smith and Jones, alias Smith and Jones.
Right, that's been mentioned on here. Yes. Yeah, Smith and Jones. You like that show, right?
Well, it's more of a con game show. We don't get a lot of cowboy. We don't get a lot of shooting going on. It's a lot of dialogue, but it's a good show. For the fact that they actually thought, well, one guy's going to use the fast draw guy's going to use a Colt, but the other guy, Pete Dooley, he's going to carry a Schofield.
Yeah,
I've got a friend who has one of those, and in a 5.5 inch barrel, and it's just a unique gun. It really is.
It is, and I think that it really became popular when Charlie Prince pulled him out of his leather, his black flamed leather holsters in 310 to Yuma remake, and started shooting up the place. You know, but apparently, according to that movie, the 45 Schofield doesn't have a lot of velocity because he was able to shoot Keith Carradine in the guts and not kill him. So must be a really weak gun. Yeah, how did that happen? So sorry, we just got really old West nerdy on you there, Western movie nerdy. But yeah, it's a great gun. I've actually seen him at cowboy action shooting matches, and they're terrific. They're all good. They're all good guns. You know, they really are. My open top, I took it to the range, and some kids played with it, and they loved it. And it's surprisingly accurate for a gun that was really meant to be a point and shoot gun. Got a little beady sight on it, so it's amazing how a lot of people don't know that the person that you portray, Jesse James, was a Confederate guerrilla, and point and shoot was what they did. Yeah. They didn't sit down there and aim down the barrel all the time, right? They were close in gunfighters, weren't they?
Yeah, for someone who handles a gun quite often, as a real outlaw would have, he's going to develop that proficiency that is going to keep him alive. And so yeah, he's going to learn where that gun goes in terms of his hand-eye coordination. It's kind of like where the camera is on this phone. So. But truthfully, yeah, I mean, if you're and you got to remember back in those days when they had black powder frames and black powder cartridges, that they weren't shooting a extremely powerful load. So the muzzle flip on a black powder gun, unless it's an overloaded casing, is not going to be very, very strong. So.
Yeah. But somebody says they're going to hold that against me. My set of 51 Navies are my best shooters. Yeah. Maybe I misunderstood that question. I'm not saying they're not. I think it's because of the small little front sight on those things. You instantly sort of think that maybe you're not supposed to extend arm's length. I mean, I can't see the damn thing, but
right.
It's
like a military size on a 1911. Oh my goodness,
Yeah. What are they like in an original 1911? I've never handled an original 1911.
I just happen to have one.
Do you? Why don't you go get it? Okay, he's gonna go get that. Let me answer some questions here. I'm sorry about the questions, guys. I'm working really hard. I'm actually not working that hard. I should work. Yeah, screw the glass. Yeah. At some point, I'm gonna let you in a little secret. I don't always drink from the glass. After a long day's work, I usually tip the bottle up. So that's the true Santee. And you all are here to see it. Oh, look at that.
Now that's the front blade.
Whoa, I gotta put my sunglasses on. Seriously. Oh, come on, man. Okay. Look at that front sight. No, seriously, show me. It's all right. Did I scare him off? Okay.
This a little less bling on this guy, okay?
No, that's okay. I was just kidding you.
All right. So here is
a. Oh, that's a really small front sight. You're right.
Yeah, that's just considered a military sight, and this right here. So on the 1911 nickel gun, it was just a bit smaller, but that's it. That's all you get. So wow. There's no adjustability in that. It's just boom, there it is. And so, and I think like I said, if you really enjoy shooting, then you're going to get good with the gun.
We have a Harker Creek gunfighter in here, so.
Oh, I see that. Well, now I'm seeing.
Hey, that's awesome. Almost as pretty as my Cimarron. Wait, I know who that is. That's Greg Wyckoff. Am I right? Am I right? Is that you, Greg? If it's Greg Wyckoff, he just got a Cimarron. Oh, geez, stop it. Wow, look at me.
That is a Cimarron.
It is. Wow. Do you mind me asking how much that ran you?
Actually, I got it, let's see, about 500 and something bucks, 500, less than 550. It was on sale at Bud's Guns.
Okay, so uh, I did something here somehow and got this Harker Creek gunfighter banner. I don't know how I did it.
Yeah, it's on there. I can read it. So
Um, show.
okay. Oh,
Oh,
there you go.
oh, hey Tyler, how you doing? Sorry. Okay, wow, guys, I'm learning about this just as much as he is. I could have been doing this all along. Wow, I apologize, folks.
Yeah, you're a pretty enjoyable guy, Santee. Come on, man.
Well, I'm working on it. I don't know how to get rid of it though. There we go. Okay, back to Mitch Herod. All right, we're gonna know better. I think next week I'm gonna do a live stream with a gentleman that's on here right now named Richard, who has Small Caliber Arms Review. Richard, are you still here, Richard? I can't hear you, Richard. Can you speak up, Rich? Anyway, uh, he has a channel about small caliber arms, but he also does a lot of Old West stuff. And so we're going to talk to him next week. And then eventually we're going to talk to old Drew there from Living History Comes Alive, who plays Wild Bill Cody. So if you all like this live stream, even though it's been a little rocky today, and I appreciate your patience, we're going to do more of them. So if you like them, if you hate them, please let me know that you hate them. And then we won't ever do another one ever again. And Santee will just drink his troubles away.
Well, it certainly has been enjoyable. Not, we talked about what we would, mostly cover and how many times we get off track, but we've done pretty good, I think.
Mitch, it's been a pleasure to have you because you are a wealth of knowledge, and Mitch and I talk a lot during the week. And one of the things I want to do with Mitch at some point is talk about the Old West guns because he finds stuff in westerns and movies that he watches that I would never see. Like, oh, did you see that electric pole? No, I never saw the electric pole. He'll see stuff like that, but he also sees stuff about guns. Like, did you notice that when Jack Palance and Shane pulls out his guns, they start off as Colts, but when he pulls them out of his holster, they're double action Smith and Wesson. Right? Am I right?
Yeah.
I never noticed that. So Mitch has got the eye, and I want to share his eye with you. That sounds gross, but
Something like that. Yeah.
we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mitch, would you like to do that?
You bet. You bet.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
I think there's a reason that we talk so many times that Hollywood chose to use the guns they used. And you see, why do they have an 1892 Winchester and 1879 television show, or Gunsmoke show, which is in the 1870s? Or why is that? Well, there's probably a good reason for it. So
yeah, I mean, we can talk at length about it. I think one of the best things about the era that we live in now is that westerns are they're taking them more seriously historically in a historically accurate way than they did back in 1975 or 65 or even 55, right? The interesting thing about those 1930s and 40s westerns is those were real cowboys that were in those, and a lot of them were from that old west era. They were so a lot of those outfits you see and you think, well, they would never wear a hat like that. Well, guess what? They probably did. So but we're gonna touch on that. I think that would be a good video. What do you think?
Well, I do. Wardrobe is what's made the icon in our minds in our country. What I'm wearing today is simply what Hollywood told you that an outlaw or a gunfighter would wear: the black hat, the black and the white. It's a little Will Kane, it's a little Wyatt Earp, but it's what Hollywood has given us over these so many years. But you're right. Back in the teens, when they first began silent movies, they employed real lawmen and one-time outlaws. And then by the 20s and 30s, when they began talkies and they began the singing cowboys, then we get into these outfits that were just not quite. We kind of laugh at today, like the movie Wrestler's Rhapsody. They've got in all these fringe shirts and just incredibly immaculately almost white outfit.
Right,
And
right, right.
you know, so, but, but, but like I said, there's a reason why they chose all this stuff, and we'll talk about that sometime.
Yeah, I think that would be a good video because we can talk about the guns and the wardrobe. I can touch on the wardrobe if you want to. You catch all the gun and the holster stuff, which is really cool. But yeah, you're right. And we also talk about mustaches. Like the bad guy up until like 1980s, the bad guys always were the ones with the mustache. Like, the good guys never had the mustache. Or the doctor had a mustache, the banker, but
that's right. You know, there was a movie, and I brought this up before you. Gregory Peck was in a movie, and he was in a Western, and he had a mustache. And the head of the studio found out after they made the movie that he did it with the mustache on, and he was mad. And he asked the director, he said, "How's the movie selling?" He says it's going great. He says that the box office takes very good, and the head of the studio said, "Well, it would have been better if he hadn't had a mustache." So, you know, they were dead set against mustaches in those days. So,
yeah, nowadays you can't have a Western without a guy in a mustache.
Snidely Whip had a mustache, you know.
Oh, Snidely Whiplash. Oh, okay. So all bad guys look like Snidely Whiplash, huh? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's right. Marshall Stockburn's guys on Pale
Right.
Rider all had black hats.
They did. You're right. And Clint Eastwood just had the 5 o'clock shadow, or right, didn't quite have the full mustache because he wasn't really a bad guy. That's funny. You know, that's actually really interesting. We should talk about that. That's, huh? I wonder why they did that, because clean cut was the rage back then, huh?
Well, I know Hollywood determined clean cut was. Jim West never had a mustache unless he was playing another.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that episode of Bonanza where Little Joe and Hoss go to this town to pick up some horses or something, and their doppelgangers were the bad guys that were just there,
right?
And they were in trouble. But all they did was put mustaches on them to make them the bad guys.
Well,
wow, man, I feel really singled out here as the bad guy. I'm not happy with this.
There's a whole.
You play a bad guy and you don't have a mustache. Something's wrong, man.
There's a whole Gunsmoke episode where Festus meets his doppelganger.
No, I've not seen that. Really?
A mustache.
I can't believe I've never seen that one.
Yeah, he's the bad Festus. Yeah.
There's a bad Festus. Awesome. Well, you know what? We're going to wrap this up. We've been talking for an hour and a half almost. So,
like shy 2 minutes.
Yeah, I know. But I want to thank you, Mitch, for coming on. It was really a lot of fun. I had a good time.
My pleasure.
I appreciate everybody coming on. And once again, I'm sorry if I didn't get to all your comments. I have to figure out how to juggle this a little bit better. And next time, if we do it, we will have a moderator just in case there's a bad seat in here we need to get rid of, because we can't shoot through the camera.
So now, if it's
technology. What?
So a moderator, if we say something wrong, they go.
No, if somebody comes into the chat and decides they want to be a jerk and say something like, you know, all you cowboys are gay or something, then the moderator would get rid of them, you know. So.
Well, I was just thinking maybe a moderator was the guy who sat there. If I answered the question right, I get a ding, 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 ding. Or
you know what? Maybe with the stream duck here, we could for the paid version, perhaps the duck actually does come up and quack and slam his bill down, and yeah, that's probably what happens. Yeah. You know, we just have to pay the $20 a month for it, so we could do that.
It's a special bonus.
Yeah. It's a special bonus. We'll figure it out. But anyway, I want to thank you for coming on, folks. Thank you so much for being a part of our first live stream. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for all your tips. I'm sure I'll be hearing from you about what I could do better next time. And next week, we'll have another video, hopefully. Everybody take care. Don't let the coronavirus get you. And, you know.
And we'll see you on down the trail.
Let's try that again. Let's take two. Okay. Thanks for watching. And as always, like, share, and subscribe.
On down the trail.
Like, share, and subscribe.
And we'll see you on down the trail.
So hard to get good help these days.
I'm telling you.
Signing off.
Rehearse.